Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Abby Wackerly, and I'm an independent community health studies major. I work for the social justice organization on campus, People Who Care, and am the current Oxfam change leader. As we proceed with the convocation today, I ask that you please silence your cell phones at this time and give your full attention to our inspiring convocation speaker and service award winner, Gyude Moore. Gyude graduated in Berea in 2006. During his time here, Gyude served with the Berea Teen Mentoring Program and as Berea's first Oxfam change leader. Oxfam is an international organization that works to right the wrong of poverty, injustice, and hunger, and the Change Initiative partners with students to create lasting change on their campus and beyond. Throughout his 3 years working with Oxfam, Gyude traveled to 24 different states with Oxfam's fair trade and anti-poverty campaigns. As a change leader, he lobbied on Capitol Hill, which is an opportunity he did not have growing up in Liberia or Cote d'Ivoire. He used his experience to encourage his peers to take advantage of their U.S. citizen rights, to access their representatives, and the amazing opportunity to voice their opinions and requests made known to their Congress in order to fight for the justice of others. The issues Gyude worked on 10 years ago, like poverty, workers' rights, and hunger, are still being worked on today. Great strides have been made, but together we must proceed in hopes of completely alleviating poverty, injustice, and hunger. Gyude continues to work on these issues in this nation in Liberia. Our friends from the archives have located an interview with Gyude from 2005 when he was still a student. So please join me in watching this interview and after in welcoming Gyude Moore.
My name is William Gyude Moore, but I prefer to be called Gyude. That's my Liberian name, and I like it better, I guess. So, yeah, and I'm from Liberia. I'm a senior political science major, and I'll graduate next year, even though I'm a senior now, next May, with a bachelor's degree in political science. I went to high school in a refugee camp, and when I was in 11th grade, I was visiting some friends, and they were looking over the brochures from Berea. I have no idea how they got it. But they were saying there's this college in the United States that will give you a full tuition scholarship, That is so not true, because that's not possible. However, when I came back, after I graduated high school in Ivory Coast, it's a French-speaking country. There wasn't much I could do. So I went back to Liberia and just got on the internet and Googled Berea College, and it was true. So I applied and I got accepted. Yeah. Before I came to Berea, I had a general direction of where I wanted to go. I wanted to help create a world in which kids didn't have to experience what I did as a refugee. Your life gets cut short. Nothing is normal for you anymore. You get used to seeing death, pain, and suffering. I don't know if I'll ever be able to create a world that is completely free from that. But the rest of my education and everything I do after Berea is going to be towards that direction of working in a place where I actually influence what happens to the lives of children involved in living in war, living in poverty. Everywhere I go, I say it. I know it sounds like a little propaganda piece for Berea, like a PR piece for Berea. But in spite of all the complaints that students make, you didn't bring the pictures, did you?
No.
Oh, yeah.
But I can put them over.
I guess, yeah, I just compare who I was then and what I was then with who I was and what I am now. Without Berea, look at my family in that picture. They're not just poor, they're dirt poor. But just simply because Berea gave me an opportunity, it's not just my success. If I ever become anything, it's not just me. It's my family and everybody else who's connected with me that is lifted along with me. And so I guess, for Berea College, what it does, just bringing international students here and giving them an opportunity they wouldn't have had otherwise, is like one of the most powerful things that could ever happen. And for me now, I'm not just thinking about Liberia, I think about Africa. And so if I ever did become something or do something to help lift the continent of Africa, it would be simply because Berea College gave just one student an opportunity. What could be more beautiful than that?
That was excellent.
Good afternoon, everybody. Really good to be back here in Berea. It's really amazing to see old friends. I see Jim and Alina Strand. I remember I got arrested for driving without a license. And Alina took me to court. There was another student at Kelts named Mindy. She actually picked me up from the jail. It's crazy. But it's really good to be here. It's also sad to be here and that Michelle Tooley is not here physically. But Michelle is here with us. And everything that Michelle stood for, there's still students who've been impacted by that and who will continue to carry that forward. It's been an amazing and crazy couple of days getting here. First of all, it took the embassy forever to get my visa. I should just give you a 2-minute version before we get into what we came here to say. And on Tuesday, I got the visa and figured, look, I would take Kenya Airways from Monrovia to Accra. I would get on KLM, go to Amsterdam tonight, and tomorrow, which will be Wednesday, I will be in the US and I can make it to Kentucky. I got to Ghana, KLM was overbooked. So I decided, okay, I'll sleep in Ghana tonight, and on Wednesday morning, I'll go to Delta, because Delta flies directly to JFK. Delta was overbooked. So we're running out of options now. At that point, I couldn't take any European carrier because none of them will come directly to the US. They will have to go to Europe, and that would be Thursday. I would definitely miss this. So I took South African Airways and landed at DC-8 around 6:50 this morning. So I missed my 7:30 connection to Atlanta, of course. And when I tried to get on the 941, they told me it was full. It's spring break, it's Easter, so they tried to get me in on standby, but it couldn't work. Like, she had to manually try to do it and it still wouldn't work. She took it out as a personal challenge, I think. And so she got me on there. And so I decided, okay, I would just take my suitcase and check in. I would not check my bags in, and then when I get to Atlanta, I would change my clothes. When I tried to go in, the guy told me my bag was too big. So I tried to milk the whole thing with the crutches, and say, look, I'm on crutches. It's like, it has nothing to do with the size of your bag. So I asked for the nearest bathroom, and I went to the bathroom and to change. So I changed into this Adolas. And I was wearing a really nice shirt too. And the stall next to the one that I changed in, I'm sorry, it's pretty gross, but somebody had peed on the floor. And my shirt fell into that. So I got dressed and then took the plastic bag from the dry cleaning from this shirt, picked up my pee-soaked shirt, and dropped it in there. And by the time I got to the gate, went through security, it was all crazy, but finally, even though I was on standby, I got a seat, got into Atlanta, and was like, oh, we got this. Got into Atlanta, flight got delayed, 14 minutes, 17 minutes, 30 minutes. Then we stopped counting. Then they changed the gate. So we should have been in Lexington at 1:30, but at 1:15, we're taxiing to take off from Atlanta. And so we got here, and Sheila, bless her heart, it's raining out there. She did her best to get me here on time. So, eventually we made it. I thought I should share that with you before I talk about what we gathered here for. Just so you know that somewhere in Washington, D.C., in a trash bin, my really nice shirt is soaked in a stranger's pee. As you read, and people who knew me when I was here, I did a lot of work with Oxfam. And this thing about margins, I was actually at an Oxfam training. It was my junior year, and it was almost my turn to go up to speak. I was putting together my notes, and then something occurred to me. I tried to get a yellow one, but we couldn't, so I used one of these. I was using those legal pads, the ones, you know them, yellow, the red margin. And I was going through my notes and noticed that all of my notes had been meticulously written within the margins, here. And if a thought occurred, something that was good to know, but that wasn't actually a core, Ajman, please. And I noticed that I had been writing all of my notes. Sorry. I had been writing all of my notes in the margins. And then I looked at my friends and other change leaders, and I noticed they were doing the same thing. And it dawned on me that within the constraints of the limitations of any illustration, these margins represented the way society is structured. See, there are three things that I noticed about margins, and I want to share them here today. That the first thing about margins is that margins are very distinct. Here, it's a red line indicating what is in the margin, what is out. When margins are initially done, it allows no room for nuance. It's clear, distinct, identifiable, recognizable. And we impose margins for reasons. If you're a student and you're taking notes, you want to be able to take notes so that you can remember the core material or so you can prepare to study. Well, by writing within the margins, when it's time to study, time is limited so you can focus on what is important. What is in the margins is good to know. It's not necessary. That's one. The second thing about margins is that by nature and function, they're limiting. Look at the space of what is in the margin and what is outside the margin. Margins are designed so that this side is limited in all of the spaces here. If it is important, it will be written here. If it's not important, it can be scribbled within the margins. The third and final thing about margins is that margins, even though they appear permanent, they're malleable. Margins can be altered. Margins can be changed. Margins can be moved. I'm saying all that today to talk a little bit more about a community that has lived over 400 years within the margins. And a part of that has been allowed because good people have been silent. I think the time has come for us to begin to address this. I have two beautiful kids. There's Ade, and you just saw Liam. I want to do everything that every parent wants to do for his child, to be able to give their children an opportunity to make it, to be productive citizens, to be able to get a leg up in life. And I've tried to do everything that I can for my kids. But I've also realized that in the process, I have passed on to my kids a debilitating weakness. And until we address that, my kids are going to live in a world that is unfair, that everything I do for my kids will not matter. It's because me and people like me were born outside the margins of society. Before the 1600s, race, as we know it, did not exist. People were Irish, British, well, whatever. But it became necessary. Race, as we know it, actually comes out of slavery. At the time, Europe was awash with ideas about equality and justice, and people were uncomfortable with enslaving people. And so to be able to enslave Africans, it became necessary to make them slightly less than human. It became necessary to portray them as not fully human, so it was okay to be able to enslave them. And in the process, a line was drawn, a line that continues to have an effect on the society as we live in it today. A line clear in terms of who deserved dignity, who was fully human, who was within the lines, who was outside the line. Remember I said that margins, when they're first set, are clear. And there's nothing clearer and more inescapable than the color of your skin. These margins meant, in America, whether one parent was black and one was white, the offspring of that union was black, because blackness was outside the margin, and anything it touched was diluted, was made inferior. So black people and their generations will forever live outside the margins. It didn't matter how much we put into our children, how much education they get. There is a line, a clear line that society accepts everywhere. And this is not just about American racism. It wasn't until this year that Mexico actually began to count Afro-Mexicans as a unit. It wasn't until 2012 that Peru actually began to address the condition of black people in Peru. 51% of the people in Brazil are either black or mixed. Look at Brazilian economic, social, political, and cultural life. You wouldn't know this. Today, in Germany, there's a guy from Burkina Faso who's with the German version of ACLU, is suing 10 nightclubs in Germany. Nightclubs shouldn't really care what you look like. They should just care about what you intend to spend. But 10 nightclubs will not let him enter because he's black. It doesn't change in the Arab world. Blacks in Iraq are still deprived. They lived on the margins of society. And it doesn't change because you go to North Africa. Dark-skinned and Tunisians, Moroccans, Algerians of African descent continuing to live in the margins of society. The point I'm trying to make is not just about American racism. A mark was set of who was considered fully human and who wasn't. And 400 years later, it continues to have the same effect in almost every country in the world. Prove me wrong. Find a country where the minority black population is treated equally and fairly. It will be the exception to the rule. It'll be very difficult to find, but you might find it. The second thing I said, that margins are by nature and function limited and limiting. People, I follow football, not the one you do, like soccer. And just as the highest level of basketball is played in the US, NBA, the highest level of club football is played in Europe. There is a player from Brazil, Dani Alves. He's a defender. Dani Alves is the second most decorated player in all of Europe. He used to play for Sevilla in 2008. He began to play for Barcelona. Barcelona is the most successful football team in the world. Dani Alves has been a starter on Barcelona since 2008. It means if you go into the locker room, his jersey will be hanging, waiting. He's a starter. He doesn't come off the bench. One day, Barcelona was playing Valencia. And he went to take a corner, and somebody threw Dani Alves a banana. Now, I want you to think about this. I'm the Minister of Public Works. I travel across my country. And even in the remotest part of Liberia, because of satellite TV, they're Barcelona fans. So every night Barcelona is playing all across the continent of Africa, we're sitting and watching with our children. And somebody throws a banana to Dani Alves. What do we explain to our sons and our daughters? What that banana means? But you see, the thing is not just Africans and people of African descent who are watching this. In Spain, in Italy, everywhere else, there are white people and their children watching. They have to explain to their children what it means by that banana. Margins are by the very nature limited and limiting. Oprah Winfrey got followed in a store in London because they thought she would steal. Wealth does not free you of the limitations of margins. The president of North Korea could refer to President Obama as a monkey, even though President Obama is one of the most accomplished men in the world, but because he's black, he continues to be subject to the limitations of margins. Every black person, no matter where you are, over the course of his life will be subject to certain indignities traceable to the single fact of their blackness. What happens to people who are caught in the margins, outside of the margins for so long, 200 years, 300 years, over time, they begin to believe it. Today, skin bleaching is a huge problem across the continent of Africa, but that's just Africa, in the Caribbean, wherever you have black people. Because when a person is outside the margin, then they try to find their way to move toward their ideal. What can get me across? If I look lighter, I'm pretty. If I look lighter, I'm more beautiful. I have a question for you, a thought experiment. Have you ever seen a mature white woman who works, say, maybe on Wall Street with cornrows? Of course not. If a young white girl has cornrows, it's a phase. But cornrows can be nice. Black women do it all the time. But extensions and weaves, billion-dollar industry. As black women, black people told for centuries, you're outside the margin, everything about you is ugly. Try to attach things to ourselves, change the color of our skin. Margins limit people. But that's the reason I'm talking about this is the third point that I mentioned. As permanent as the same, as permanent as they look, margins are alterable. Margins can be changed. It wasn't until quite recently, actually, that Irish people and Jews became white. Initially, they were not considered white, but the margins moved back to accommodate them. The margins can either be moved back or destroyed, but margins can only be changed in the same manner in which they were imposed, intentionally. You know, Dr. King will always say that the moral arc of the universe bends towards justice. What we should add is that the moral arc of the universe has never bent toward justice on its own. It has to be bent toward justice by people. We have to move back the margins, people. We have to destroy the margins, wherever they are. And so the question would be, but what can I do? It's just me. And 2 videos. You can get an opportunity to watch it when we leave here. One, so a 13-year-old kid in Texas. Everybody remembers that incident when a Texas cop tackled the little black girl. There was a 13-year-old kid, white kid, on the side who was asked, and he said it. There was a whole bunch of us standing here. Some of us, the white kids, the cops, they didn't pay any attention to us. They just went after the black kids. I think that's unfair. That was his point. Even though we're all kids, even though we're all participating in the same deviant behavior, when the cops showed up, certain people have already been marked. Certain actions are expected of them because they live outside the margins of what is appropriate. That's why a good system with good people in it will still produce racist results, because the system fundamentally has never really fully accepted the humanity of the black person or his descendants. I am making this speech here at Berea College today because this is what we are. This is what we stand for at Berea. At Selma, there were representatives from Berea College. Our motto says that God has made of one blood all peoples of the earth. So if I can't make this speech here at Berea, I can't make it anywhere else. And if people at Berea are not willing to move or destroy the margins, I don't know who else will be willing to move and destroy the margins. Berea College is the second after Oberlin to educate blacks and whites in the South, yeah? I mean, before we extended to Appalachia, that was the core of what Berea College stood for. We want to be able to live in a world where all our children have the same opportunities, but believe me, we can tell that to ourselves as much as we want. That's not the case. African students in Morocco get spit on simply because they're black. Whenever I travel, I don't travel with blah, blah, blah. When I'm done with my meetings, I don't wear suits. I wear jeans and a t-shirt and go out. There's no mark on my face that says this is the Minister of Public Works from Liberia. I'm just another black person. And once I'm outside official circles, I'm subject to the same disrespect that is accorded to black people simply based on the color of their skin. I went to The Hague for a meeting, and the driver who picked me up from the train station was a guy from Eritrea. And I was talking to him and saying, how do you like living here in the Netherlands? So I've been here for a while. I was first in Rotterdam, but then I moved to The Hague. I moved from Rotterdam because in Rotterdam, the society has no respect for black people. Here in The Hague, over 50% of the people living here are diplomats. So when people talk to you, they don't know if you're a diplomat or not, so people are on their best behavior. So I like living here in The Hague. But a lot of the black people in the Netherlands cannot move to The Hague. Now, if the people in The Hague, simply by thinking that a person is a diplomat, accords them the respect that is due them as a human being, it is possible to change the margins that have subjected black people to the fate that we've experienced for over 400 years. This cannot be left to Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter is just a small piece of what I'm talking about. This cannot be left to Al Sharpton. The silence of the good people is what perpetuates the repression of those who are marginalized. And until a significant number of us actually believe this and actually do something intentionally, because I told you the margins are only erased and altered in the same manner in which margins are imposed, intentionally. It is my hope that as people of Berea College, that 10 years from now, the world is remarkably altered because we've decided we're not going to respect those margins anymore. We're not the ones who are going to feel uncomfortable because our uncle is saying racist stuff. He's going to be uncomfortable because he can no longer say that around us. The national security, the director of the National Security Agency in Liberia is a pretty powerful man in Liberia, but he happens to be a black guy. And he was in New Jersey shopping along with his friend. And before they knew it, they were surrounded by cops, pulled guns on them, handcuffed him by his car for about an hour. People were passing by, looking at him. Eventually, they released him. Supposedly, they were chasing a criminal who happened to be African American. The thing about it, though, was when Fumba was arrested and handcuffed, there were a lot of other people around him, white people. So he is suing them because he says he was profiled. The only reason he was picked out was because he matched the color tone of the person they were looking for. If they were simply going around and arresting people, they would have arrested everybody who was there. People. This is unacceptable. You cannot accept this. And there are no neutrals here. Your silence encourages my repression. There is nothing in my blackness. There is nothing in my blackness that makes me strong, that makes me more open to be slapped and spit on and abused. And I'm not resilient. I'm just a human being. Blackness doesn't convey resilience. What are black people supposed to do? Once you get repressed, you're supposed to just sit down? No, we stand up again. That doesn't mean we invite more abuse. But we cannot do this without you, though. We cannot do it without the non-black people. And I'm not just talking about America. At one point, there were students, during my time here at Berea, there were students at this college from 88 different countries. And unless your country with a black minority is actually treating them with respect, this is also on you. Samantha Power, in her book, said that witnessing tragedy transfers responsibility. Before today, you could have said, I don't know about it, but I've made this speech and you're in here. So it's on you too. Thank you.